Every day, like clockwork, a mysterious animal would make its way to the panda enclosure at the local zoo. For weeks, the caretakers were puzzled by this unexpected visitor and wondered what could possibly be drawing it to the panda exhibit day after day. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. He wasn't big, he wasn't loud, he was just a small, slender thing with a black mask across his face and a tail striped like a barber's pole. But he had a purpose in his walk, a certainty in his step, as if he belonged there more than any visitor ever could. He'd slip past the trash cans, ignore the pigeons, and make his way straight to the panda enclosure. Always the same route, always the same time. The keepers noticed him first on a Monday. It was early spring, the air still cold enough to sting your nose. At first, they thought he was after scraps. Maybe he'd sniff around, find a half-eaten sandwich, and move on, but he didn't. He sat outside the glass, eyes fixed on the panda inside. The panda's name was Bao. She was the zoo's prydia, gentle giant, black and white, with a habit of hiding in the far corner of her enclosure. She liked solitude. Most days, she barely glanced at the visitors who pressed their faces to the glass. But when the raccoon showed up, Bao changed. She'd lumber over, slow and curious, and settle down right across from him. Sometimes she'd tap the glass with her paw. Sometimes she'd just sit, nose twitching, as if she could smell something familiar. The raccoon would watch her for hours. He never begged for food, never tried to break in. He just watched and waited. The keepers started to whisper about it. They gave the raccoon a name, Shadow. He became a fixture, as much a part of the zoo as the stone benches or the maple trees. But nobody could figure out why he came. It was Mia, the youngest keeper, who first wondered aloud. "Do you think he's lonely?" she asked, her voice soft as she swept the walkway near the enclosure. Her supervisor, Tom, shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just weird." But Mia kept watching. She noticed how Bao perked up when Shadow arrived, how the panda would eat more, move more, even play with her old tire swing. It was like the raccoon had flipped a switch inside her. One afternoon, Mia crouched by the glass, clipboard in hand. She watched Shadow, who was pressed close to the window, nose almost touching the glass. Bao pressed her forehead to the same spot. For a moment, it looked like they were talking, in a way only animals could. Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. The days passed, the story spread. Visitors started to notice the raccoon, too. Kids would point and giggle, parents would snap photos, but Shadow ignored them all. He was there for Bao. The keepers debated what to do. Should they chase him off, trap him? But he wasn't causing trouble. In fact, Bao seemed happier than she'd ever been, so they let him stay. But the mystery gnawed at Mia. She started digging through old records, looking for clues. She found a faded newspaper clipping about the panda's arrival. There was a photo Bao, much younger, sitting beside a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The caption read, "Local conservationist welcomes Bao to Willow Creek Zoo." Mia frowned. Something about the woman seemed familiar. She asked around. Old staff remembered her Dr. Ellen Park. She'd been the zoo's panda expert. She died a year ago. Suddenly, from a heart attack, Mia's heart ached. She'd heard stories about Dr. Park's love for animals, how she'd spend nights at the zoo watching over Bao, how she'd rescued injured wildlife and nursed them back to health. Mia dug deeper. That's when she found the note. It was tucked in a file, yellowed with age, a list of animals Dr. Park had cared for at home. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, Rascal Raccoon, rescued as a kit, released last spring. Rascal, Shadow, it clicked. Mia stood by the enclosure that evening, watching the raccoon as he pressed his tiny hands to the glass. "Are you looking for her?" she whispered. Shadow looked up, eyes bright, as if he understood. Bao shuffled closer, her massive head tilting. She let out a low, mournful sound Mia had never heard before. The truth settled over her like a blanket. Shadow was looking for Dr. Park, the woman who had saved him, the woman who had loved Bao. He came every day, hoping to find her, and Bao, sensing the loss, offered him the only comfort she could. The next morning, Mia shared her discovery with Tom and the others. They listened in silence. Some shook their heads, not quite believing. But when they watched Bao and Shadow together, they saw it. Something passed between the two animals, a kind of understanding, a shared grief. From that day on, the keepers made a decision. Shadow was welcome. They left out fresh water for him and sometimes a handful of berries. They even set up a little shelter near the enclosure in case he needed it. But Shadow never strayed far from Bao. Spring melted into summer. The zoo grew busier, but every morning, before the crowds arrived, Shadow would be there. Bao would greet him, sometimes with a playful roll, sometimes with a gentle tap on the glass. Their routine became a quiet miracle. Mia watched them day after day. She wondered what they talked about in their silent meetings. Did they remember Dr. Park together? Did they share memories? Or just the ache of missing someone who was gone? Sometimes, Mia thought she saw a spark of joy in Bao's eyes. The panda was less withdrawn. She played more, ate better, even started to interact with the keepers in small ways. Shadow, too, seemed lighter. He'd scamper around the enclosure, chase butterflies, and sometimes curl up in the shade, just outside Bao's line of sight. But he never left. One night, a storm rolled in. Lightning split the sky. Rain hammered the zoo's rooftops. The wind howled through the trees. Mia worried about Shadow. She rushed to the panda enclosure, flashlight in hand. She found him huddled under his little shelter. Soaked but safe, Bao was pressed against the glass, watching him with anxious eyes. Mia knelt beside the raccoon. "It's okay," she murmured. "She's here. You're safe." The raccoon looked at her, and for a moment, Mia felt the weight of his longing. She remembered her own Gloucestershire father, gone too soon, her childhood dog, who used to sleep at her feet. Grief was a language all creatures understood. She reached out, gently, and Shadow didn't flinch. The storm passed. Morning came, bright and gold. Shadow emerged, shook the rain from his fur, and made his way to the glass. Bao was waiting. They sat together, side by side, as the sun rose. The weeks turned into months. The zoo staff grew, used to the sight. Visitors started to ask about the raccoon. Mia told them the story about Doc Park, about Bao, about the unlikely friendship that had blossomed from shared sorrow. People listened. Some cried, some smiled. The story spread. Newspapers picked it up. Panda and raccoon, a friendship beyond species. Photos of Bao and Shadow went viral. Donations poured in for the zoo's conservation efforts. But for Bao and Shadow, nothing changed. They still met every morning, still watched each other through the glass, still found comfort in their silent companionship. One crisp autumn evening, Mia sat by the enclosure after closing time. The trees were turning gold and red. The air was sharp, with the promise of winter. She watched Bao and Shadow, their heads close, their eyes soft. She thought about Dr. Park, about the love she'd given to both animals, about the way that love had outlived her, weaving Bao and Shadow together in a bond that words could never explain. Mia smiled. She realized that sometimes the heart finds its own way to heal. Sometimes comfort comes from the most unexpected places, a raccoon, a panda, a memory shared in silence. The days grew shorter, the nights colder, but every morning, as the first light crept over the zoo, Shadow would appear. Bao would be waiting, and together they'd greet the dawn. The zoo staff never tried to separate them. They understood now. Some bonds can't be broken. Some friendships are born from loss, but grow into something beautiful. Bao and Shadow became a symbol not just of grief, but of hope, of the ways we find each other even when the world feels empty. And as the seasons turned, as the leaves fell and snow dusted the ground, their friendship endured. In the quiet of the early morning, before the world woke up, a panda and a raccoon sat side by side. And in that moment, all was right. Mia often thought about that first day, the raccoon, the panda, the silent conversation through the glass. She realized that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. It lingers in the spaces between us, waiting to be found again. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it comes back to you in the form of a friend. Even if that friend has stripes and a mask, the story of Bao and Shadow became legend at Willow Creek Zoo. But to those who witnessed it, it was more than a story. It was a reminder that even in our loneliest moments, we are never truly alone, and that sometimes the heart finds its way home in the most unexpected places.